Tonight, as the sun sets on Ferguson, we are waiting to see if the community will respond with new protests, with peace, or with violence, as we have seen so many nights in a row. This comes as a well-placed source tells FoxNews.com that there was a violent confrontation between Michael Brown and Officer Darren Wilson moments before the 18-year-old was shot and killed. That source saying that Michael Brown nearly beat the officer unconscious and that Officer Wilson suffered severe facial injuries, and that's not all. Trace Gallagher picks up the story from there. Trace?
And Megan, that source is very close to the Ferguson police, who tells FoxNews.com's Holly McKay the confrontation began when Officer Darren Wilson ordered Michael Brown and his friend Doran Johnson to stop walking in the middle of the street because they were blocking traffic. When they ignored the officer, he started to get out of his patrol car. But, quote, they shoved him right back in. That's when Brown leans in and starts beating Officer Wilson in the head and face. He was beaten very severely. The source tells us that Brown fractured Officer Wilson's eye socket, leaving him dazed and swollen. And now a man named Michael T. Brady, who lives near where the shooting took place, has come forward with this account, telling the New York Times, quote, something was not right. It was some kind of altercation. I can't say whether he was punching the officer or whatever, but something was going on in that window, and it didn't look right. Our source goes on to say there was then a struggle for Wilson's gun, and it went off, and that authorities have, quote, solid proof that Brown actually touched the officer's gun, though the source won't say on the record what that proof is. But we're told that Michael Brown then started to walk away, prompting Wilson to pull his gun and order Brown to freeze. Brown then raised his hands, turned around, and said, quote, what, you're going to shoot me? Which is consistent with what Officer Wilson's friend Josie said on the Dana Lash radio show. Listen.
So he stands up and yells, freeze. Michael and his friend turn around, and Michael starts taunting him. Oh, what are you going to do about it? You know, you're not going to shoot me.
Our source then says Michael Brown went at the officer, who fired 6 shots, including a final shot to the head. And now we're told that Officer Darren Wilson is terrified that the grand jury, which began hearing evidence today, will make some kind of example out of him and vote to indict. Megan.
Trace, thank you. Joining me now with more, Mark Fuhrman, Fox News contributor and former LAPD detective. New developments tonight after last night. We played for you a statement by Missouri Governor Jay Nixon. He's a Democrat. The governor appearing to suggest that the police officer involved in the Michael Brown shooting is guilty, or at least needs to be prosecuted immediately. Listen again to what he said.
10 days ago, a police officer shot and killed Michael Brown in broad daylight. We have a responsibility to come together and do everything we can to achieve justice for this family. A vigorous prosecution must now be pursued. The democratically elected St. Louis County prosecutor and the Attorney General of the United States each have a job to do. Their obligation to achieve justice in the shooting death of Michael Brown must be carried out thoroughly, promptly, and correctly. Once we have achieved peace in Ferguson and justice for the family of Michael Brown, we must remain committed to rebuilding the trust that's been lost. So I ask that we continue to stand together as we work to achieve justice for Michael Brown.
Justice for Michael Brown, not justice, period. And that's an issue legally. This broadcast and others questioned the governor's choice of words, repeated choice of words, and last night they told Shepard Smith they stood by the story and went the statement. But today we heard back from the governor's office, and now they're saying, quote, the governor's comments yesterday were not intended to indicate prejudgment in this matter. The governor used the term prosecution to refer to all duties and responsibilities of the prosecuting attorney, and goes on from there. Mark Eiglash is a criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, and Mark Fuhrman is back with us now, former LAPD homicide detective and a Fox News contributor. So we are not playing you the moment where they shot that man to death, but you could hear the number of them. He was a 25-year-old man, and the St. Louis police chief spoke soon afterwards, saying the suspect was armed with a knife and was threatening the officers, and the officers were acting in self-defense. Joining me now, Mark Fuhrman, Fox News contributor and former LAPD homicide detective. Mark, what do you make of the tape?